Crockett enters mid-question, mid-pressure, like she's already peeled back the first layer and McCarthy didn't realize the hearing had started without him. The tension is immediate, a quiet, surgical kind that makes staffers freeze with their pens halfway to paper. She lifts one page of the budget, just enough to show she's holding something he doesn't want named. McCarthy stiffens. A tiny reaction. A warning shot. "You called this clean," she says, letting the word carry its own accusation. No heat yet, just precision. McCarthy offers a quick reassurance, too quick, and Crockett catches the stutter in his confidence like a hunter catching scent. That's the tell. That's the opening. And before he can reset, she leans in a fraction and asks the question that cracks the floor beneath him. "Did you read all of it, or just the parts you wanted us to see?" Crockett opens steady, voice flat enough to sound harmless. But the question she leads with has an edge, the kind that makes staffers pause mid-keystroke. McCarthy answers too cleanly. Too quickly. A practiced line, but the cadence is off by half a beat. Crockett hears it. The room hears it. A single eyebrow lifts, that's all she needs. She slides the first page of the budget forward, just an inch. "Let's start with what you called clean," she says, not looking up. McCarthy shifts in his seat, subtle, but not subtle enough. He tries a laugh. It dies on contact with the silence. Crockett taps the page once. Not accusing. Not dramatic. Just surgical. "You stand by that description, correct?" McCarthy nods, but his jaw tightens, the kind of tell you only catch when someone knows what's coming. Crockett watches the muscles work. The room leans in by instinct. She gives him one last out. 100% clean? McCarthy swallows before answering. That swallow ripples across the chamber louder than his actual word, yes. A staffer 2 rows back mutters something under their breath, fast, nervous. Crockett hears that too. Her eyes sharpen. Pressure line drawn. "Good," she says softly. Then turns the page. And the whole room shifts with it. Crockett keeps her tone low, almost bored, as she points to clause 14. "The one you didn't mention in your press briefing." McCarthy straightens, too sharply, and the move pulls a few eyes toward him. "It's procedural," he snaps, faster than the question deserved. A jumpy answer. A defensive tempo. Everyone hears the shift. Crockett doesn't react. She just tilts her head, like she's studying a weak hinge. Procedural for whom? That question lands heavy. A couple of members glance at their aides, one whispers, "Here we go." McCarthy tries to reset, palms flat on the table. But his voice comes out clipped, rushed, stumbling over the justification. He says, "Standard," twice. Then, "Routine." None of it fits. Crockett flips the clause forward with a single finger. "Because this redirects funds before authorization. That's not routine." Her tone doesn't rise, the room's tension does it for her. McCarthy opens his mouth, shuts it, opens it again. A micro-hesitation. A tiny crack. But Crockett catches it instantly, and the air shifts toward her. "Let's be clear," she says. "No one in this chamber was told about this adjustment." Murmurs flare, short, sharp, nervous. McCarthy tries to laugh it off. Wrong move. It comes out thin. Crockett leans in just half an inch. Not aggressive. Inevitable. "So when you called the budget clean, you were referring to a version we never saw?" The line detonates softly, the kind that spreads faster than shouting. McCarthy's rebuttal starts with a breath he can't control. Too long. Too audible. Too late. The room recalibrates. Not in his favor. McCarthy reaches for his notes like they're a lifeline. Crockett watches the move, eyes narrowing, predatory calm. He quotes his earlier statement. Except he doesn't. He butchers a key line, swaps "no alterations" for "minimal adjustments," like no one would notice. The room freezes for half a second. Then 3 staffers on opposite sides look up at the same time. They all caught it. Crockett doesn't interrupt. She lets him finish the wrong version, the safer version, the version he just invented. Then she drops the correction like a pin in a silent hallway. "Your words were, there are 0 adjustments." None. Her delivery is flat, but the line hits like a crack across glass. Someone whispers, "Oh, wow," under their breath. McCarthy blinks. A single, tight blink, the kind that always shows up right before panic. He tries to patch it. "What I meant was." Crockett cuts in. "No. We're not redefining English today." A ripple of suppressed laughter runs through the back row, the dangerous kind. The kind that signals a shift in allegiance. Crockett slides the second hidden clause forward. No theatrics. No emphasis. Just precision. "This one contradicts your public claim directly." She taps it once. A soft sound, but it lands like a gavel. McCarthy's hand tightens around his pen until it clicks. Another tell. Another slip. He tries to pivot to process, the classic dodge. But Crockett is already turning the page, cutting off the escape route. Let's not pretend this is paperwork, she says. This is direction. Intent. Concealment. Members shift in their seats. A few start scanning their own copies of the bill. Trust is leaking out of the room in real time. McCarthy attempts a smile, but only half his face participates. Crockett notices. She doesn't look away. The problem isn't the clause, she says quietly. It's that you hope no one would read it. And just like that, the slip becomes the story. Crockett links the clauses together with surgical calm, each connection tightening the vice. These adjustments, she says, mirror the cuts you publicly denied last week. McCarthy's shoulders twitch, just once, but the room catches it. He jumps in too quickly. That's being taken out of context. But the words collide in his mouth, overlap, stumble. The kind of stumble that smells like fear. Crockett doesn't raise her voice. She just angles her body slightly toward him, shutting down his retreat path. Which context? The one you gave reporters, or the one you hid in the fine print? A few members murmur. One leans back, arms crossed, the universal "this doesn't look good" posture. McCarthy tries a new tack, slow, authoritative, rehearsed. But midway through the sentence, his cadence fractures again. Too slow now. Dragging. Losing oxygen. Crockett lets the silence spread. A wide, suffocating quiet he has to fill. He rushes to fill it. Mistake. He contradicts himself, first claiming no knowledge, then claiming it was flagged earlier, then denying both. 3 positions in 20 seconds. Every pivot weaker than the last. Crockett's eyebrows lift a millimeter. A microreaction. A signal to the room that the unraveling has begun. She flips her notes closed, deliberately, like she's already won the point. Mr. McCarthy, she says, you're shifting between explanations faster than we can track. Which one are we supposed to believe? McCarthy opens his mouth. No words come. Just a breath that stalls in his throat. Someone in the gallery lets out a low whistle. A staffer on his side suddenly finds something fascinating on the floor. Crockett leans in just enough to make it personal. No one here is confused, she says. We're watching you choose evasion over clarity. Again. The line hits. Hard. Clean. And the room, once tense, now tilts unmistakably away from him. Crockett doesn't announce the third clause. She just places it on the table, face up, like evidence dropped at a crime scene. McCarthy doesn't recognize it at first. Then he sees the allocation line. His pupils tighten, a fast, involuntary micro-flinch. The room feels it. Everyone goes still. This, Crockett says, tapping the page once, funnels appropriated funds into a donor-linked project you swore under oath you had zero involvement with. A gasp cuts across the chamber, sharp, collective. Phones come up. A reporter in the back actually stands. McCarthy's chair squeaks as he leans forward, too far, too fast. That's not accurate. But his voice cracks on the first word, and the crack does more damage than the denial. Crockett slides a transcript toward him. You said, quote, I have never directed a single dollar toward that project. She doesn't blink. Your signature sits on the reallocation line. Right here. The room erupts, not loudly, but with a swarm of restrained reactions. A low rumble. A tight murmur. The sound of bipartisan realization. McCarthy's face freezes in a half-explanation he can't finish. His mouth opens, but the words collide before escaping. A stammer. A swallow. Then another. Crockett reads the transcript aloud, slow enough that every syllable hits. Never directed a single dollar. Then she places the document beside the clause, aligning them like matching fingerprints. McCarthy shakes his head, small, frantic motions. That was taken, I was referring to, that's not the same. Every attempt contradicts the last. Every pivot weaker. Sweat beads at his temple, and a staffer behind him visibly winces. Crockett cuts through it with a single line. You lied to this committee, and you lied to the public. The words drop like a steel door slamming shut. Someone whistles under their breath, a thin, involuntary oh shit from the back row. McCarthy's hand grips the table edge. Knuckles blanch. He tries to speak, but Crockett isn't finished. You didn't just hide a clause, she says. You hid your fingerprints on it. Silence. Thick, heavy, punishing. McCarthy finally manages a defense, barely audible. I need to clarify. Crockett cuts him off with a surgical slice of a line. No. You need to be accountable. The chamber leans toward her. Not him. And McCarthy realizes, too late, that this is the moment the room stopped doubting. And started believing the evidence. McCarthy lunges for indignation like it's his last weapon. Why wasn't this raised earlier, he snaps, trying to reclaim authority with volume. But the phrasing is off, too rehearsed, too desperate, and the room hears the wobble. Crockett doesn't flinch. She cuts in mid-sentence, voice calm enough to sound cruel. It was raised earlier. You dismissed it. The reversal hits the chamber like a dropped mic. Members shift forward, a few actually tilt their heads, waiting for his reaction. McCarthy freezes, mouth half open, caught between denial and outrage. Neither option looks safe anymore. Crockett presses the advantage instantly. You were warned by Democrats. You were warned by Republicans. You ignored both. Her cadence turns sharper, each line snapping like a trap closing. McCarthy tries to reframe, I didn't ignore, I prioritized. But Crockett slices through the spin. Prioritized what? Secrecy? Donor influence? Your narrative? A low ripple moves across the room. Not laughter, judgment. The kind that shifts air pressure. He attempts a slower tone, reaching for gravitas. I acted in good faith. The line lands dead on arrival. Not a single nod. Not one. Crockett leans back slightly, giving him room, which somehow makes it worse. Good faith doesn't hide reallocation clauses, she says. Good faith doesn't misquote its own testimony. Good faith doesn't sign what it swears doesn't exist. Each sentence stacks on him like weight plates. His rebuttal collapses under them before it even starts. McCarthy's posture deflates, shoulders dipping, chin lowering just a fraction. It's small, but the chamber registers it instantly. Power leaving the host. Crockett sees the shift, locks onto it. This committee isn't confused, she says. You are cornered because you did this to yourself. McCarthy's next words come out soft, almost pleading. I just need to explain. Crockett interrupts with surgical finality. No. You need to answer. A few members exchange the look, the this is over look. Even his allies stop meeting his eyes. The reversal is complete. In seconds. Before he even realizes the floor has disappeared beneath him. Members start flipping pages like they're searching for landmines. Not one person looks to McCarthy for direction. That absence draws more attention than any outburst could. A Republican 2 seats down pushes his chair back an inch, not far, but far enough to signal distance. A Democrat across the aisle mutters, unbelievable, loud enough for 3 mics to catch it. Crockett doesn't raise her voice. She barely moves. Everyone here was told this budget was clean, she says, letting the word hang. Her emphasis isn't loud, it's surgical. Measured. Deadly. McCarthy immediately shakes his head, trying to claw back control. There were misunderstandings. The room reacts before Crockett does. A wave of groans, quiet but unmistakable. People aren't buying it anymore. She slides her copy forward. This clause alone contradicts your public statement, she says. But let's pretend it doesn't. Let's pretend the others don't either. She pauses. Let's everyone imagine the hypothetical that already feels absurd. You still concealed material changes. She doesn't blink. You still misled both parties. Another beat. And you still lied to the voters who trusted your word. A staffer behind McCarthy closes his laptop, not gently. The kind of close that says we're done here. McCarthy lifts his chin, trying to look defiant, but his voice betrays him. I made the best call with the information I had. A weak line. A tired line. A line that lands with the weight of a deflated balloon. Crockett doesn't attack. She just gives the room space to process what he said. The silence that follows is worse than any confrontation could be. It's the silence of people realizing they were played. Finally, Crockett speaks, low and steady. Betrayal isn't a partisan issue. She turns a page with deliberate calm. It never has been. The chamber shifts, a collective, quiet acknowledgement. Not outrage now. Recognition. And McCarthy sees it. In real time. The exact moment when bipartisan trust evaporates. And he's standing alone in the empty space where it used to be. Crockett doesn't push the victory. She lets the room fall into its own quiet. A heavy, post-detonation stillness that settles over every seat. McCarthy tries to straighten his papers, but the motion is shaky, a gesture meant to signal control that only confirms he's lost it. No one looks at him. Not anymore. Crockett's voice drops to a level that forces the room to lean in. This wasn't a budgeting error, she says. It was an honesty error. Her tone isn't sharp now, it's final. The kind of tone you use when the debate is over and the consequences begin. McCarthy opens his mouth like he wants to object, but something stops him halfway. Maybe the facts. Maybe the room. Maybe the weight of his own contradictions finally catching up. Whatever it is, he closes it without a sound. Crockett continues, slower now, each line deliberate. Budgets tell the truth about priorities. And yours told the truth you tried to hide. A murmur rises, not outrage this time, but agreement. A collective recognition of the moral line she's drawing across the floor. She gathers her notes, smooth, controlled. Not triumphant. Not theatrical. Just done. Leadership demands transparency, she says, standing. Even when it's inconvenient. McCarthy doesn't stand. He doesn't speak. He just stares at the documents in front of him like they're evidence at his own indictment. As Crockett steps back, the chamber's energy shifts again, not toward escalation, but toward consequence. The kind of consequence that lingers long after the camera's cut. The final silence isn't explosive. It's heavier than that. A verdict without the vote. The confrontation ends, but the weight doesn't lift. It settles. Hard. The kind of aftermath where people avoid eye contact because they know the damage is bigger than the man at the table. Crockett doesn't gloat, she doesn't need to. The evidence has already done the talking. McCarthy sits motionless, absorbing the collapse of his own narrative, not from a single blow, but from every contradiction he tried to outrun. The chamber feels different now. Colder. More awake. Everyone knows the budget wasn't the only thing that got exposed, the trust behind it did too. This is the part of the clip people replay. The silence after the truth lands, the moment accountability stops being theoretical and becomes unavoidable. Did McCarthy fall because of the clause, or because he thought no one would ever challenge him on it?